Hey everyone, welcome to the Fortress of Solitude podcast. I'm your host, Sergio Pereira, and today I am joined by my symbiote, Jarrod Saunders. How are you, my parasite?
Wow, that's quite an intro.
I had to.
Yeah, I've never been called a parasite before.
Well, I didn't mean it in a bad way. I meant it like in a sort of way of like, Venom.
Venom's a bad guy, though. Still a parasite.
No, he's not a bad guy. I mean, did you not watch the movie? Did you not watch the first movie?
I watched the first movie. I still thought he was a bad guy.
How was he a bad guy? He helped him defeat all the other symbiotes, and he gave him he saved him. Okay, yes,
people.
Maybe.
And he ate people.
He ate brains, but I mean, the guy's hungry. I mean, come on. It's like, are you telling me all lions are bad people? If they find somebody that's walking in the middle of the pride.
That's a valid point. That's a valid point. But in this case, he's sort of like a demon. That's the way I've always seen it. He's like a demon that's possessed somebody, and I've gone completely James Wan with this.
No, he's an alien. That's Venom. But speaking of bad guys, though, the ultimate bad guy is coming now because Venom, Let There Be Carnage, is on its way, and obviously that means it's Venom versus Carnage. And I mean, I'm super, super psyched to see this because I remember from back in the day playing Maximum Carnage and Spider-Man, the animated series, and the comic books. And Carnage to me always felt like Marvel's Joker. I don't know if you got that sort of vibe from him. Because he's serial killer, like a funny guy. And he was a bit funny sometimes. I mean, in a psychotic sort of way. But I mean, what did you think of Carnage? Was he one of your favorite villains as well?
I've always thought of him as, the thing is, I've always thought of him as the more evil version of Venom. So Venom is sort of in the middle, and then you have Spider-Man on the one side and then Carnage on the extreme other side. That's the way I've always thought of them. And for most people who probably haven't read the comic books or haven't played any of the games or watch any of the animated films or TV series, they probably just think of him as the red version of Venom.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, obviously, in the comics, the origin is that he's, basically Venom's offspring, but he's he's stronger, he's also more evil, but also it's because of the way that he bonds to his host's personality, accentuates Cletus Cassidy's personality. And Cletus, obviously, is a serial killer, and he's completely psychotic. So Carnage, when he bonds with him, it creates this whole new supervillain. So yeah, I'm super excited about this because I remember, obviously, when the first Venom movie came out, there was a lot of debates, will the main villain be Carnage at that point? And they kept it, obviously, for the post-credit scene. And the fact that Woody Harrelson was cast as Carnage, I think it is probably one of the best castings of all time. I can't see anybody else besides Woody doing this role.
I would watch anything with Woody any day. I mean, he could be painting a building and I'd watch it. He's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, he's great. And I think that it also teams him up with Andy Serkis again. I mean, they were obviously together in War for the Planet of the Apes, which I thought was fantastic. And now, obviously, Andy Serkis is behind the camera. He's directing the movie. And we're going to get to see, obviously, Woody Harrelson going completely nuts in this movie because that's what we expect from Carnage. Yeah. So it's going to be fun.
It's actually, it says something that the fact that Andy Serkis didn't cast himself as Carnage, because I mean, technically you could have pulled it off too, but I'm sure he saw something in Woody that that he probably didn't have. That's why he cast him.
Well, the thing is that Carnage was already cast before Andy Serkis, because remember Ruben Fleischer?
Yes.
He was a director, and then he didn't return because he wanted to do what is it, Zombieland 2. Which, funny enough, was with Woody Harrelson as well. So, so it was an interesting thing. And obviously, Andy Serkis boarded the project. He was the second director to come on board. But to be honest, I think that he's actually the right person for this movie because with the CGI that they need to do for the likes of Venom and Carnage, they need somebody who's revolutionary, who understands it. And that's something that Andy's been doing since, I mean, he was a second unit director on The Hobbit. So he knows.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So, I mean, he was not only just playing, Schmeagles and Gollum, he was actually also doing a lot of the stuff. So he's got a lot of experience. I mean, he did that Mowgli movie as well on Netflix.
Yes.
So he's got obviously all that experience. What I am super interested to see is like if they lean more into the complete nuts nature of the first movie, because I remember the first movie when it first came out, a lot of the critics were like, "Yeah, it's not like Marvel," and there's a lot of debate around it. But the fans loved it because it was just such a weird movie. It was just weird and funny.
Yeah, it was a lot.
It's a fun movie.
It's different. Yeah, it's a lot different from the Marvel stuff. It also feels like. Sort of like a darker comic book movie, not like in the vein of DC, which DC takes itself very seriously. But this feels more like the Marvel stuff, just done darker. That's sort of how it feels.
It's difficult to say, but it kind of feels like everything is a little bit tongue in cheek. You know, the way it's done.
Yes.
I mean, even when he eats, when Venom eats at people's heads, it's still kind of funny. The way he talks about it, can I eat this? Can I eat this? The way he gets excited about, it's just,
it looks like they've just taken that whole concept and ramped it up even more in the second one. Like, based from the first trailer that I saw, I was like, they've taken the funny bits and ran with that, it's very funny.
It was like the one scene I saw in the trailer where Eddie's getting ready to fight Carnage or something. He sees Carnage and he calls on Venom, and Venom just says, "Nope, not doing this." I love this. That was one of my favorite scenes. I was like, that was amazing. I thought that was fantastic. And I've actually been reading some interviews with Tom Hardy and Andy Serkis, obviously promoting the movie, and then I also watched some of the YouTube clips of some of the interviews, and apparently there's one scene, an intro, that it's like a fight between Venom and Eddie that takes place in the apartment, and I can't wait to see this, because can you just imagine Tom Hardy fighting himself on screen? It's going to be amazing just to see this.
Yeah, and it looks like he's having a lot of fun with this role. Usually he does this super serious stuff, or where he's this hardcore character. Even when he played DC's villain, when he played Bane. Yeah. I mean, he took that very seriously. Whereas here, it looks like he is having a lot more fun with playing a comic book character.
But that's the thing. I find that there's room for obviously super serious movies and kind of family friendly movies, and also something that's kind of in the middle. As you say, with Venom, I just find it's great to do just a fun movie at the end of the day. Venom is the kind of thing that, you're going to go watch it. You watch it at the cinema. It's a great popcorn flick. You're going to sit down, have a good time. And then at home, you're probably going to watch it a couple more times as well. That's the reality of it, because it's one of those movies that you're just going to have a lot of fun. And I hope that Let There Be Carnage is going to have a sort of vibe as well, that it's going to be one of those rewatchable movies, because I'm down. I really am down for this.
And what I actually like the fact that they didn't go full R with this. A lot of people are complaining on the internet that it should have been it should have gotten a hard R for violence and whatever. Yeah. But I'm glad that it sort of does the PG-13 thing, because it doesn't steer away from being brutal, but it's not. It never becomes like a Tarantino gory blood boss thing, And I think that works for comic books. It doesn't have to be this hard
R, yeah. Well, I mean, put it this way: when Venom and Carnage kind of debuted in the comics, I mean, comics were pretty much, they were PG-13. Yeah, they were never really pushing the bounds of being R-rated. When we saw Carnage in basically, what was it, in Spider-Man the animated series, that was supposed to be a kid's show. Maximum Carnage the game. These things were not rated R. They were done within the confines of PG-13. So I don't necessarily think the rating makes that much of a difference, unless you want to have swearing, nudity, and really extreme violence. But you can still show it. I mean, we still saw heads being eaten. Obviously, just kind of alluded to and off screen. You wouldn't see the head coming clean off the body. But at the same time, do you necessarily need to see that? Is it a make or break for the movie? No, it's not.
I think it works perfectly the way they've done it now, because it leans to both. Teenagers are probably a big audience for this sort of thing anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, I would argue something like Mortal Kombat, which, you know, the source material is pretty much brutal and gory. Like, yes, that needs to have like a hard R rating, because I understand it's very difficult to do it otherwise. But Venom, Carnage, you know, Spider-Man, they all started off in the comic books, and, you know, it was never the sort of problem that, you know, you couldn't get away with things. You had to do it. You just had to do it smartly, and that's the thing. You don't need to have, you know, buckets of blood here. So that's a weird thing. Like, yeah, I know Carnage is obviously a serial killer, and he's going to be, I'd imagine, a lot more brutal. We are going to see that, but at the same time, it's like he can still do that without having to be. I think it's probably more the illusion of like what's actually happening. You're going to be seeing that and kind of seeing like the bodies maybe off screen already, like being slaughtered, which is fine. Yeah. That's good enough.
I see. I was thinking about it now, and I see what you mean by him being like the Joker in a way. Because even in the trailers, we see him in prison, and he's locked up, and he still has that. He has the look like, you know, like the scene with Heath Ledger was in prison in The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
where he looks evil, and he's projecting. He doesn't even have to necessarily murder anybody or anything, but just looking at him, you can see that there's something not right with this guy.
No, definitely, and I've just always had that vibe from him. I think because, you know, I grew up obviously with a lot of mid-90s sort of comic books. That was pretty much like when I was like getting into comics like really seriously. And Carnage was super big at the time, because obviously Maximum Carnage had just come out, the animated series. And I remember, I think it was the Marvel versus DC cards. There was a certain thing, and I was always like, yes, you know, like looking at different matchups. And my Carnage versus Joker, it just always made sense. Or they'd even team up. But, you know, you could just never trust them. I think, you know, both those guys would like stab each other in the back. So, and I mean, at the end of the day, Shriek as well is effectively, you know, the Harley Quinn as well. You know, Shriek is going to be like, and I can't wait to see what they do with Shriek, because that was a super cool character as well in the Marvel comics. And I'm super excited here to see. Like, the actress is really good. I remember she was also, I think, in Mowgli, if I'm not mistaken, and I've seen her in a couple other things. So I am super keen to see what happens with this movie, because I think we're going to be in for another good time. Look, there's no doubt. I don't think it's going to be sitting on 100% Rotten Tomatoes, but who cares? Like, as long as we have a good time, that's what I'm all here for. And I hope that it does well enough that we get a Venom 3, or if a Venom 3 turns into a Maximum Carnage with, obviously, Tom Holland's Spider-Man coming, that's a possibility that I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Look, I think these films, like this one specifically, is very important for Sony, because this is like, I think, you know, they say the first one was like the beginning of Sony's Marvel universe, but I feel like this is the more important movie. Like, this one will make or break this universe. Like, if it doesn't work, then they'll probably have to introduce like the other characters. Like, but I think this is a big one for them. There's a lot riding on this one. So I think they've done their work here and made it really good.
Well, I mean, the thing is, you've got, obviously, Morbius was delayed because of, you know, the pandemic. It's only coming out next year, because Morbius was technically supposed to come out before this one. So I'm actually keen to see how if there were any changes made. I suppose all those stories will come out after the movie comes out, because they might be reworking a couple things, you know, just naturally because of the release dates. But obviously, you had the Venom, the Morbius, Craven as well supposed to come. I'm leaning towards the fact that we are going to be getting the Sinister Six, because we know Sony wanted to do Sinister Six like years ago, and they've always had Sinister Six, and I truly believe, I mean, like, judging by what we saw in the Spider-Man 3 trailer as well, you see Doc Ock, I mean, Electro is probably going to be on the way, some version of the Green Goblin, I'd imagine, as well, just judging by the bombs that we saw. You already got like all these other characters being introduced. It's leading to that. That, I think, is going to be basically Sony's Avengers. Is going to be Sinister Six, like Spider-Man, maybe Spider-Man and Venom versus Sinister Six. Who knows?
That'll be interesting. Yeah, it's funny when you first mentioned Venom. like Venom's first appearance, I actually thought about the original one, back in Spider-Man 3. Was it Spider-Man 3? Yes.
Oh,
with Tobey Maguire. I thought you were referring to that one, and I had to remind myself, no, there was a first Venom movie. It wasn't that.
No, not that one. Like, let's look. I'll be honest. I would be keen to see, like, and I know Topher Grace has been, like, trolling a little bit on the internet saying about his Venom coming back in the multiverse. I would be interested to see it come back. Like, imagine, like, Tom Hardy's Venom, like, interacting with Topher Grace's.
Oh, and that would be classic.
It would be like one of those comedic moments, and I'd be down for that. Like, I'd be down for seeing that, because at the end of the day, I think even though some movies might have been more successful than others, and some have, like, stronger place in our hearts than others, everything happened and led us here to, like, now for a reason. We're here where we're at now in the comic book movies because of everything that came before it. So yeah, some stuff worked and other stuff didn't, but the point is, if it hadn't happened, we wouldn't be here today. So
it's interesting that, like, it seems like Marvel and DC are both doing this thing with the multiverse at the moment, where, like, films from way back are important now. Like, they're serving fans stuff from the past and the present and the future all in one movie. So it's interesting to see how that plays out.
Look, the reality is, like, canon, if you stick too closely to canon all the time and you're worrying about canon, you paint yourself into a corner because there's so many things happening. So if you just say, you know what, just let's just detonate it, like, everything's connected, we're all connected, all these different universes, and it opens up, like, a lot more fun to be had. I think with creators, you're able to interact. And the thing is, I think it's difficult with movies, especially because there are certain fan favorite characters that have appeared in different iterations. So, for example, we could say that, Alfred Molina's Doc Ock is probably, they'll struggle to replace him as Doc Ock because everyone sees him as that character. He's really, really good.
Yes, so he's really good.
You would love to use that character somewhere else. Like, I mean, look at J. Jonah Jameson with J.K. Simmons. He was basically J. Jonah in the original Spider-Man movies, and they brought him back for this one now. You're like, whoa, that's awesome. So it kind of, it creates the possibilities of bringing back fan favorite, characters and actors and stuff like that.
And it gives a chance to some of the actors who were put in, like, for example, Jamie Foxx, who was put in a position where his role wasn't that great. He gets to redo this character again. He gets another chance at doing the character better.
Exactly. So there's just a possibility of it. And I think, I strongly believe that Venom is going to have some importance in this as well. Going back to Let There Be Carnage, I think that
for sure,
as you say, it's the middle movie, but it might be the connecting bridge, because we know that Spider-Man 3 is coming out at the end of the year. So there's going to be something here that's going to connect to it, like, in a sense. There's got to be something. And I've been avoiding a lot of rumors and stuff, but there's a couple things that I've, like, people have been posting online. Maybe this might be happening. A couple of theories, and I'm not going to speculate too much. But I think it
makes perfect sense for us to get some kind of Spider-Man cameo. I mean, I was expecting it from the first movie already, like there would be some kind of connection to Spider-Man. But I think they played it safe there. I think that will come with this movie.
But you know what? I'll be honest. At the same time, I'm enjoying Venom without Spider-Man as well. That's a weird thing, because they are so connected. Like, we know they're connected in the comics. We know that the original, origin story is basically, Spider-Man was first bonded to the symbiote, and symbiote got angry with him and bonded with Eddie. Then Eddie went after, like, Peter Parker, basically. We know that. But I enjoy the origin, the way they did it here, and I enjoy the separation, because it was kind of nice to see Venom on his own versus, Venom almost being a supporting character for Spider-Man here. So I thought the movies did it pretty well. And sure, inevitably they are going to collide at some point, or they are going to team up or something like that. But it's been great to, like, let them go on their own paths, each one building up their own legend effectively. And I'm super keen to see what happens.
I wonder if they'll be able to pull this off with the other characters though, because I mean, most of them are villains, right? How many of them will we actually end up liking, especially when they go up against Spider-Man? Like, how's that going to work? Like, how do I root for Tom Holland's Spider-Man when I actually like Tom Hardy's Venom? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I don't necessarily know if Venom. I think Venom and Spider-Man will have like it'll kind of feel like a buddy cop sort of comedy. You know, like they're going to be bickering a little bit of dissension in the ranks, but I believe that they'll probably work more together than against each other. Morbius as well has developed himself into like an anti-hero, so I don't see that being a problem. Craven, I am interested in seeing what happens there, but that's been very quiet as well. So I don't know what's happening with that movie or what they're going to do. But Craven, there's a lot of possibility of actually turning him into a bit of an anti-hero, sort of like, you know, not really a bad guy, because there's a lot of potential there. I mean, Craven was also a bit of a sympathetic villain at times, as one Spider-Man. Okay. So we know that he's also got a bit of a tragic history. I would be worried if like they made like like just a Carnage movie where he's like supposed to be the hero. That's where I start worrying. Like that's when you're like, okay, I don't understand how this is going to work.
Give us a whole backstory and make us, you know, sympathetic towards Carnage.
It's kind of like
they can't do that.
First Halloween, the first Halloween when the Halloween reboot that Rob Zombie did. We give a backstory to Michael Myers, like, and it was like, we don't really care about him, he's a killer. So like, just stop trying to justify his actions. But yeah, man, I'm super psyched. I can't wait for Let There Be Carnage. And yeah, thanks again for joining me, and to everyone else out there listening, let us know, are you pumped for the movie? Do you think it's going to be better than the first one? What do you hope to see out of it? Like, do you hope that it connects to the Spider-Man 3 in some way? And yeah, let us know in the comments. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, cheers.